everybody, I've got such a fun video for you today because what we have here are 3 generations of Toyota 4-wheel drives, and in this video we are taking a look at the different 4x4 systems and finding out the progression and of course which one is best. This is a 1976 Toyota FJ40, the original Land Cruiser, and this is basically representative of every Toyota system prior to like 1990. And this is a 2014 Toyota FJ Cruiser, and this 4-wheel drive system can be found in a lot of Toyotas from the 2010s and even through today. And this is a 2022 Lexus LX 600, but the secret behind the LX is underneath. It's a Land Cruiser, and here in the US, this Lexus is the only way to get the brand new tech-laden 300 series Land Cruiser. So we have 3 generations of 4-wheel drive, 3 very different philosophies. Let's check them out one by one. This 76 FJ40 is an iconic 4-wheel drive, and this one is almost 50 years old. It's completely shot in just about every way, but it demonstrates the practical use of a simple 4-wheel drive system. So at the front we've got a straight 6 engine mated to a manual transmission, and that's connected to a transfer case. Now the transfer case serves 2 purposes. The first purpose is to go between 2-wheel and 4-wheel drive. So when you're driving around every day, you leave it in 2-wheel drive and just the rear axle is powered. When you go into 4-wheel drive, it locks the front and the rear drive shaft together at the same speed, and then you've got power going to both axles. Now the second purpose of the transfer case is to multiply the torque through gear reduction so you can go into low range. All right. Pretty simple, very basic. Now front and back, this vehicle has solid axles or live axles or beam axles, whatever you want to call it, but basically you got a straight beam that connects the left and the right wheels together. Once again, very simple, rudimentary, but it leads to good articulation, kind of a nice little pivot point, and keeps tires touching the ground. In those axles, we have open differentials. So you've got a differential in the front and one in the back. And the purpose of a differential is to differentiate speed between left and right tires. So when you make a turn, that inside set of tires is going to spin slower than the outside because it's taking a much shorter radius around a turn. And we'll see the disadvantage of that when we go off-road. Now down here, you'll notice something. This vehicle has locking hubs, and this is often a mistake I see all the time online, but folks think that locking hubs are the same as locking differentials. That is not the case. A locking hub is an old school method to essentially connect the wheel to the rest of the driveline, and when you unlock it, it disconnects that wheel so that you don't get all that kind of excess drag from moving drive shafts and the like. But it's still very much an open diff. And then the way the axles are attached to the vehicle, leaf springs, front and back, which is a technology from like the Roman dynasty. Very basic, very simple, but I think we'll find quite rough. So let's take this over the trenches course and see how it does. Oh. The power. All right, so off-road in the 76 Toyota Land Cruiser. Now we're gonna go through trenches and we're gonna see if the 4-wheel drive system can kind of get us unstuck. So basically what's gonna happen is opposite wheels are going to go into the air, and then that's going to force the 4-wheel drive system to compensate, and we'll see quite honestly if it can. I'm a little skeptical, but we'll see how the Land Cruiser does. This is one of the most iconic 4-wheel drives of all time. So I'm going to dip into trenches here. I'm in 4-wheel drive low, and we're going to see how the articulation is and if we're going to get stuck. So just going to take it nice and slow. So basically the left side is down in the trenches. Going to modulate the clutch. And then I think what we're going to see is as the vehicle starts to articulate out. Oh, look at that. So even with fully open diffs, the vehicle has enough articulation to kind of get us where we need to go. Oh, I spoke too soon. So now we are spinning wheels. What has happened is the left front is in the air and so is the right rear. So I'm going to have to back it down a little bit and give it another go with a little bit of momentum. Come on, grip. All right, next one. Purposely taking it a little slow to make it harder on the vehicle. Now with wheels in the air, sometimes you can apply the brake and force wheels to grab, but not in this case. So I'm just going to have to kind of force it through. Oh man, that's a rough ride. All right, we're stuck up here. I'm kind of modulating the brake and the gas, trying to force the open diffs to grab. Come on, buddy. Come on. Come on, figure it out. Come on, grip. Oh, there we go. Sweet. So what's going on there is we had tires in the air, and with open diffs, you're pretty much limited on what you can do other than power through. So basically what's going on there is all of the torque from the engine is just being directed through the spinning wheel, and you don't actually make any forward momentum. So we did make it through, but it was a little bit sketchy. All right, so fast forward to the FJ Cruiser, a throwback style vehicle meant to look like the FJ40 with the white roof and the round headlights, but that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about the four-wheel drive and the suspension setup on the FJ Cruiser. Now, the secret about this vehicle is underneath it's basically a 4Runner, and it really isn't all that different from a modern day 4Runner you can buy today. So up front, same 4-liter engine, mated to the same 5-speed automatic transmission, and then behind that is a transfer case, just like that FJ40. This vehicle has 2 high, 4 high, and 4 low, just like that FJ40. And just like that old Toyota, you have to go between 2-wheel drive and 4-wheel drive. Pavement, it's dry, stick it in 2-wheel drive. It's wet, you're on the rocks, 4-wheel drive. Same system. Now what's different is of course the axle configuration. So first of all, it's got automatic locking hubs, that's nice. And we have independent front suspension. So now the wheels can kind of do as they please depending on the terrain. And this also has an open front diff, just like that old FJ40. So you're probably thinking, well, sounds similar, it's gonna perform similar. It's not, because we start to see some really great tech make its way into the equation. Out back, it has a solid axle. This vehicle has an electronic locking differential. So do you remember in that old Toyota, you got one wheel in the air and it just span and span and span? With this vehicle, you can lock both rear wheels together and force them to spin at the same speed, which will make a huge difference out on the rocks. But it also has something called A-Track, Advanced Traction Control. And even with the diff unlocked, you know, driving around, feels nice and comfy, it's not doing that weird diff crab thing, it will engage the brakes to stop spinning wheels, to force torque to the wheel on the ground. So we're gonna start by going 4-wheel drive low with A-Track on, and then we're gonna go 4-wheel drive low with the rear diff locked, and we'll compare the two. All right, so FJ Cruiser, let's go into 4-wheel drive low, just like that, and I'm going to tackle the same course as that FJ40 with diffs unlocked. So open diffs, and I think it'll perform pretty similarly to that older Toyota. So we're diving in. Now this vehicle does have an independent front suspension and a solid rear axle setup, and we do have the much softer springs in the FJ Cruiser. Now as I get articulated here, so we're stuck. So kind of similar to that FJ40, maybe not quite as good articulation because we made it past this part, but you can see I'm accelerating, the wheels are spinning up, but we're not going anywhere. So now I'm gonna push the A-Track button, Advanced Traction Control, and wait till you see what a difference that makes. So I'm gonna apply consistent accelerator, and it sounds like sneakers in the dryer, but check that out. I'm gonna come to a stop, get it super off kilter once again, right about there, right? Lose all momentum, and just a little bit of accelerator. Those brakes engage, they clamp down on the spinning wheels, and we are able to crawl through. Very impressive. Now it is a little herky-jerky. It's not a particularly refined experience, and when those brakes grab, they grab hard. But you can see that they're so effective at getting what we need done. Very, very, very cool. So I'm gonna try that one more time. Let's turn A-Track off. And let's go ahead and explore what it's like with the rear locker on. Rear diff lock engaged. That's gonna flash a little bit. I'm probably gonna need to drive forward. Give that a second to actually click on. Let's see if it can figure it out. There it goes. Okay, so rear diff on, and immediately that has a negative impact on our turning circle because it doesn't allow the rear wheels to spin at different rates, and it kind of drags itself around turns. But check this out. So rear diff lock on, 4-wheel drive low. I'm gonna take the same nice slow speed so we don't give it any advantage. And immediately, right, we got stuck here the last time. We're gonna get stopped, completely articulated. It's like we're driving on pavement. It really provides that much traction and grip. Same thing here. I'll stop, completely up in the air. A little bit of accelerator. Beautiful. No drama, there's no noise. It just moves like it should, and that is all based on the wizardry of a mechanical locker. And now that we're nearing the top here, I can simply push the button again, turn that rear locker off, and now we can make turns again. And now we come to the 300 series, the LX600, and this has gone a totally different direction than the other two. So obviously still an engine in the front, made it to a transmission, of course this time turbos and a lot more gears, but the transfer case is what is so unique about this vehicle. So it's a full-time four-wheel drive system, and what that means is when you have a differential in the center, you can have different drive shaft speeds front and rear, which means you can make turns flawlessly, doesn't make any kind of binding effect, really works well. And then it has a center differential lock when you want to lock the front and the rear drive shafts together at the same speed. Now, of course, independent front suspension, although a fairly conventional solid rear axle, but this is where things get really interesting because it's kind of an open front diff and an open rear diff, but it has that brake-based system to the nth degree like we saw with the FJ Cruiser, and something called crawl control, which will keep us going at a consistent speed while constantly monitoring wheel speed and position via computers on the inside, and then adjusting as it sees fit. Very cool. So center diff lock, crawl control, and then we also have AHC, a height adjustable suspension, and it's super overbuilt on the LX600. Let's go see how it does. Here we go through the trenches. Low range, but the center diff is unlocked. And as we get off kilter, let's see what happens. So apply a little bit of throttle. Okay, well, that was not nearly as dramatic as it was supposed to be. So the vehicle is smart enough to actually compensate for even an unlocked center diff and send power where it needs to go. And those computers act so fast on these new products, which is just incredible. But I'm gonna go ahead and lock up that center diff, and that's going to, of course, send equal power front and back. Center diff is locked up, and no special modes, just gonna use my foot. And you see, we kind of lift tires there, but the computer knows what to do. It grabs the brakes so quickly and gets us up the hill. Same thing here. All right, yeah, that is working like an absolute dream. But let me back up and demonstrate the party feature of the LX600, which is the crawl control. And this is a feature which has made it into a lot of new Toyota products. And what this is going to do is let me set a speed using this knob, and then I take my foot off the accelerator, foot off the brake, and it does all of it. So crawl control is activated. I'm in the low speed. Let me go to right around a middle speed. There you can see. That's not me doing anything. I'm completely off the accelerator. That is the LX600 figuring out what to do, distributing power where it needs to go. And it's doing a really good job of it. But honestly, I kind of like the control of just using the brake system and the accelerator, although this is like for the ultimate in newbie off-roading. I mean, I'm not touching anything and the vehicle is crawling up. Very impressive. And it's holding right around 1100 RPM. And then of course, if I wanted a little bit more speed, I can just turn the knob and the speed increases. So even though this vehicle does have open diff front and back with the new computer systems, it's pretty amazing. And actually the articulation felt pretty darn good as well. This was a really cool result. So of course the FJ40, basic, no nonsense, no frills, very durable, but not very sophisticated. You gotta give it a lot of skinny pedal to get where you need to go. Now the FJ Cruiser, you do have to remember to engage four-wheel drive. You do have to remember to push that 8-track button and lock the rear diff, but when you do, this thing is practically unstoppable. This is an amazing system, but not nearly as refined or advanced as the LX600. This is all sorts of computer wizardry and the latest and greatest in crawl control to really get you where you need to go. Now for me, the best system is actually the FJ Cruiser. This thing is incredible on where it can go. A mechanical locker, a simple transfer case, and if you want that pretty cool 8-track system, not quite as advanced as a Lexus, but overall, this is the best Toyota system out there currently. Now let me know what you think in the comment section below. As always, this has been Tommy behind the camera case. We'll see you in another episode of TFL Studios.